and welcome to yet another episode of Mindset Shift. Here, our aim is to initiate a desire of mental transformation through thought-provoking dialogue. My name is More Blessing, and as always, I'm with Tinatina Anthony. Now, on our previous episodes, we have been encouraging you to get in touch with us and ask your questions and share your views. Well, you've spoken and we've heard. Today, we'll be doing a question and answer segment where we'll be answering some of the questions you have left on our social media platforms. But before we do that, we want to get into today's episode, Flight of an Eagle. Tinatinda, hello.
Hello, Mobi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for having us. So on today's topic, we have Flight of an Eagle. So the first question on this episode, what is a vision?
Amazing. Thank you so much for that amazing question. I get excited, especially when I start to talk about issues to do with vision, because vision is a very powerful component that is required in terms of showing dominion within the society. And we get vision particularly from a bird that is called an eagle. We spoke about the eagle when we're talking about dominion, and we spoke of the aspect of how it has to undergo a particular process so that it establishes itself. But then there's also something about an eagle that makes it a very important bird. And you notice that it actually gives its dominance because of what it does. So number one, when it comes to an eagle, as I'm talking about vision, I'm also going to be introducing what the eagle does so that we understand what vision does and the power that it has as a component. An eagle, the first thing that it does, as we were talking about, whenever it's flying, it's got a particular level and altitude that it's flying at. The moment in which it is flying in that particular altitude and it sees any other bird that is not an eagle, it changes flight and it goes higher. So that's the first position that we ought to take as a characteristic of a vision. A vision, if it is too small, then it's not a vision that requires or that is justified to get provision by a big God. So as long as your vision does not scare you, it's not big enough. Because when we talk of visions, we are talking about a vision that is meant to impact the world. So if this vision is not big enough to be generational, if this vision is not big enough to transform, then it means that it's not going to give you the dependence upon the God that can give you the right utterance to achieve the vision. So when we talk of vision, we are talking about seeing your future today. But it's very important because it's not just seeing the future, but it is the ability to get your sight off the physical component of where you stand today and to where you are supposed to go. When Abraham is being blessed by God, he is told, look to the east, look to the west, look to the north, and look to the south. And that which your eyes have laid on is going to be yours. But Mobi, if I am to look at this very moment, my sight is limited. But this man is told, look to the east, and what he sees becomes his. So if he was just looking at it at a point of sight, physically, he was just going to get a land that is probably an acre. It wasn't even going to be a hectare. But Moses had to see beyond what the eyes could see. But he had to use the imaginative ability and the creative dimension, which is vision, to see beyond that which he could see. So when we talk of vision, we are talking about a man seeing beyond that which is possible at the current moment. When Nelson Mandela is trying to achieve freedom for South Africa, when he is seeing the future, he is not just seeing the initial fight or the initial battle, but he is already seeing an Africa where Africans can stand for themselves, rule themselves, and henceforth bring development within their own country. This is a vision. We see this in the likes of Kwame Nkrumah. We see this in the likes of Robert Mugabe. These were men and women that were able to see beyond the current status. So that is the power of a vision. It is able to take you beyond what you can see at that particular time. Now, another reason why an eagle goes so high, it has to be very high, is so that it is able to see its prey from a higher distance. The prey cannot look as high as it is, but it can see how low the prey is. So it already gives it an advantage over its prey. So when your vision is high, it means that all obstacles that can surround your vision, you already have dominance upon them because you're at a level where you're able to view all of them, you're able to break them down, and henceforth know what you want to achieve and what you don't want to achieve. Now, when there is vision, there is a word that is called division. So what happens in the word division? Division is like die and vision. So when you mix die and vision, you get division. It is when there are two visions that are working against each other. Another thing about a vision, it's singular. If it is not a complete and one orthodox vision, then there is division. And where there is division, people are going to be divided. I've been learning a lot from Dr. Miles Monroe when he's talking about divorce. Divorce, which is the separation of a man and a woman. When it happens, what has happened is there is now a vision that has been split into two. Meaning where the husband sees himself and where the wife sees herself are different. Immediately there is divorce. So every disunity in society is because we are not under the same vision. So we need to be under a vision that takes us in one direction and henceforth have different components that can achieve it. But the only way for the vision to be able to be developed, Mobi, is the one who gives us the ability to see beyond what we see in the physical, is the only one who can define the vision for us. So vision is important in business. Vision is important in schools. Vision is important in a life. If you want to see or if you want to predict the failure of an organization, a relationship, a friendship, is where there is no vision. Where are we going? Why are we going there? How are we getting there? These are questions that ought to be answered in vision, and they are very important, particularly if we look at it in the flight of an eagle.
Interesting stuff, Tino. So you've laid down the foundation, or you've defined vision for us and its essence. The question then becomes, how does one attain a vision?
Amazing. Vision is as simple as you seeing beyond what the eyes can see. It is you defining at your current capacity where you want to see yourself in future. So vision is almost as simple as its definition. Look into your future. Where exactly are you going? But we spoke about it when we were talking about the cities of dominion, that if purpose is not known, building vision becomes impossible, because the convictions that allow you to see into the vision, they come from purpose. See, Nelson Mandela had to understand that in him he had a heart to allow the South African people to be removed from the shackles of colonialism. So it is understanding his purpose that allowed him to build a vision that was going to remove them from that particular area. The most important question now is the process of achieving vision. This is the most difficult process, but it ought to be understood. So when you are achieving vision, what you are doing is that you are changing yourself from your current state and trying to develop yourself unto the state that is required. So the state that is required, Mobi, is the actual vision. What you do is the process. But there is a variable of time. So anything that you do as a process, by the variable of time, gives you an achieved vision. Now, in this variable called time, there are so many things that are happening. There is difficulty. There is you having to be removed from your state of mediocrity to the state of you sitting at your position of influence. Now, this period is very difficult because this period is almost as equal as the period that iron ore has to go through so that it becomes iron. So when you find iron ore, you're going to find it with a lot of impurities. These impurities remove the ability of the iron to be attractive and to have value. So what economists then call this is they call it value addition. Value addition is the ability to take something in its current state, take it through certain processes that remove impurities and that purify it so as to bring it in a new state, but the state that has become valuable. And this new state, because it has added value, it now attracts more money to buy it. That's why you see it's more expensive to buy iron than to buy iron ore. So ultimately, it means that even as an individual, you too have to go through this state of value addition. So value addition in this case does not just become an economic principle, but this becomes a principle of the universe, that there is a state, Mobi, that you have to be found in and go through processes that develop you into the state that is valuable enough to achieve your vision. This is a very painful process. Bishop T.D. Jakes talks about this when he says that it's almost as equal as what the grape has to go through before it becomes wine. There's a squenching ability that has to be done towards the grape. It has to be crushed in its different forms. And after being crushed, it develops into wine after a certain level of maturity. So in this equation, the variable of time has got difficult processes. But these are the very processes that make the value for their vision to be achieved. So write down the vision and go through the process. The Bible tells us that write down the vision, for at an appointed time, it will not tarry. So there is an aspect of time. But in between the time, that's when you are tested, that's when you are made, so as to achieve the actual vision.
Thank you, Tino. I'm taken back to the previous episodes that we had where we were talking about the process an eagle has to undergo, of plucking its own feathers and breaking its own beak. So as we are concluding today's topic, can you please link maybe some of the topics that we've had in terms of dominion, power, and leadership, and where vision stands in all of that?
Amazing. Thank you so much. As we were talking about the first episode, we spoke of the issue of dominion. And in dominion, we're saying that one ought to take their rightful place as an heir to the throne that has been presented back to us because of what Christ did for us. So this is an understanding that you ought to know. Number two is you now want to develop yourself as a leader. And we spoke about how you become a leader when you start by understanding your purpose, and through convictions that come from purpose, you build a vision. So vision in this end becomes the end goal. But power now is that component that is required so that when you've understood purpose and you now want to walk into achieving vision, you utilize the components of power so that you contribute to the abilities required for you to get to vision. So ultimately, vision becomes the end goal, whilst dominion becomes the first step. Everything in between is going to enable you for you to walk towards that particular vision. But vision is very essential. I'm speaking of vision not just to those people that are trying to rise into ministry, but I'm speaking into vision for people that have got businesses, people that have got schools, people that are planning even for a family, people that have got friends. You need to define it. Definition is important, because what we are doing, if it is not defined, we are going to abuse the rights that we have in it. So when we know the vision, we've defined it, and everything that we do thereafter is in line with what has to be achieved within vision.
All right, thank you so much. So like we said earlier, today we'll be addressing some of the questions that you have left on our platforms. So right into it, Natinda. One of the most recurring questions was, we have heard the message. How do we then start?
Amazing. It's very important for you to understand that starting anything starts with acceptance. You need to accept that having heard the message that is true, acceptance that you may have railed off the true message is important. When you accept, it already puts you in a position that you are now willing to be taught how to move from that point to another. This then becomes the importance of mentorship, the importance of fatherhood, the importance of learning from others. When you know you don't know, then you already know you have to look for those that know. When the 10 virgins had been given oil and the other 5 it lasted and the other 5 it did not last, it says that the 5 whose oil had run out were told, go back and buy from those that have. Now, buying here is not just an aspect of having money, but buying here is the sacrifice required for you to get the oil. So it is important for you to understand, when you've accepted that you don't know, you now need to put in the sacrifice to be able to access those that know, so that those that know can now take you from point A to point B until you know. And once you know, you begin to practice the principles you are taught, because these principles are going to unlock power. These principles are going to unlock influence. These principles are going to unlock your efficacy within society. When you've unlocked these principles, remember that the one who unlocked you is bigger than people.
but the one who unlocked this is the Almighty. Stay in his ways now, because it's only him that can keep you on track. So there is acceptance. There is the aspect of mentorship, the aspect of fatherhood. Who is your mentor? Who is your father? Who is directing your steps? Do you have anyone you can be accountable to? Having said that, do what they are teaching you and continue going back to the one who has taught them to, so that you stay in your ways as a person.
Okay. You had spoken, or you mentioned, of someone who has railed off. The question then becomes, is it possible to turn around from a fall?
Yes. King David, after, falling away, King David is considered as a man who was after the heart of God. But there is a time where he takes the wife of another man and kills that man. And immediately when he does this, a prophet is sent unto him to make him realize his mistake. Then there is a psalm that is dedicated towards him going back and running back to God, asking for mercy. So when one makes a mistake, it is possible to go back. But you can only go back when you've accepted that you've made a mistake, and then you go before the Lord. And as you go before the Lord, you now cry for you to receive mercy. But even as you are going to God, problem is people have used God as this means of, I can make a mistake, he can forgive me. So you are continuously performing the same mistake. When we spoke of that mentorship, when we spoke of that fatherhood, if you have somebody you can be accountable to, make sure that person also helps you. Because the Bible says, confess your sins one to another and pray for each other. The one to another is the part of accountability, so that you don't make it a usual cycle. That if you make a mistake, you ask for forgiveness. You make a mistake, you ask for forgiveness. But here you're able to make a mistake, ask for forgiveness like what King David did, but have somebody you're accountable to, so that this person can be watching your steps and finding out whether you're moving from point A to point B. So don't make mistakes look like it's a defining moment in your life. But if you don't develop systems and structures around that mistake, it becomes part of your character. And when it becomes part of your character, it dismantles you as a person, as a believer, as a businesswoman, you name it.
Okay, and question 3, someone asked, what can one do when systems, communities, and families are against their values and morals?
Amazing. I think this was answered in the aspect that we spoke about of power, where sometimes you can change certain things by the aspect of dunamis. Sometimes you need to develop into kratos, you need iskos, you need exousia. So particularly in these questions, I realized that the person spoke of systems. So when you want to address systems, there is a particular level of power that we spoke about, which is auke, that you need to develop into so that you're able to stand against the system. When you stand against a system, problem with the world is the world has taught us that you need to fight, and sometimes people fight without the power required to stand against those systems. So when you're now addressing systems, you need to grow as an individual, grow in the dynamics of power, and then address the system at the capacity of power that you have. Don't attack a system you know you have no power over. Because when you do that, the system is going to engulf you. The system is going to finish you. And when you don't deal with systems effectively, you're going to do what Joseph did when he rose to the position. When Joseph becomes the governor of Egypt, he attracts his family gets something to eat. Joseph dies, a new Pharaoh arises. The Pharaoh does not know Joseph, and that Pharaoh now makes the Israelites go back into captivity. So it's important to understand that if you don't deal with the system completely, it may work for you at that particular time, but your generation will suffer. So dealing with systems requires that transformation of auke as a power, so that you're able to dismantle the system completely, and that system can benefit a generation, a nation that will go from there. Thank you.
Okay, so we have heard words like conviction, purpose. Somebody asked and said, how can one realize their purpose?
Okay, amazing. We spoke of how, when we were having the first episode, we spoke of a flower, or a leaf rather, when we said that its color, when it was being put by God, It was primarily for it to be able to complete the process of photosynthesis, because that color is the one that is chlorophyll, which attracts sunlight, and the sunlight is a component required for photosynthesis. Now, understanding the importance of that color is equal to understanding what God has put in you to define your purpose. So purpose becomes you going back to what God has already said about you and believing what he has said, even if you're not in the state that it looks like. So you go back to the manual, you go back to the Bible, you look at what God is saying about you, and you hear the word of the Lord. But the word of the Lord, remember, there is a rhema, but there is also the current word of the Lord, which is accessed through prophetic vessels that God has already placed for us. We need to hear what God is also saying about us at that particular time. So having accessed that and having read the Bible, growing in the Bible and becoming what the Bible has said, you're already defining what your purpose is, and you begin to live within it, whilst also getting the current and seasonal word of direction that comes from prophetic vessels. Yes.
A follow-up question on realizing purpose. How do I then align my purpose to my career endeavors?
Amazing. I always say, especially when I'm talking to young people, that sometimes we need to understand that our career gives us money. The money that we get, it is the one that provides provision for our actual purpose. So we have so many people that right now they're developing their careers, but their career is their end goal. So you want to be an accountant, that's your end goal. You want to be a lawyer, that's your end goal. It shouldn't stop there for you to realize the potential of purpose. Because that career, it is meant to give you money. It is meant to give you influence for you to be able to bring forth other people onto board. You only know its true purpose and destiny when it involves other people. If it is still about you, it's just about your career. The moment other people are involved, now it becomes your purpose. Because God raises you for others. He doesn't raise you for you. So your career can be what you are currently doing in school now. But ask yourself, in my successful career, what am I doing within that career to then pull back others in society to bring them where they are? So you're going to see that there are men that become lawyers, but the money that they are making in these law firms, they are building systems that can teach people about structures in the country, teach people about how to become a lawyer, open children's homes. So all these things now become you impacting the society. So the time you give back to the society through your career, you've aligned your purpose and your career. So don't make decisions that just define your career and it's over, but go beyond that. You don't want to work for a businessman for 25 years and it does not click into your mind that you were in a training season. Now you can open your own business. See, we need to build such people within our country, within society. So align these two by realizing that what you are doing in your career should actually contribute to what you're going to achieve thereafter. Let it not stop just in your career.
And our last question for today's episode. Is one able to invest in our national developmental strategies through Dominion in Christianity?
Yes, definitely. I think if we look at our wonderful vision that we've been given by our president, where it says leaving no one behind in the development of our country, you're going to realize that this calls for people in all particular areas to stand up and find out that they've got something they ought to do to contribute to what the nation is going to see at the end of the day. As Christians, like I said, we are living a life of divinity. This life is a life that is requiring us to develop ourselves to be men and women of value, men and women of impact, meaning to say that as Christians arise, things like theft should be reduced, things like prostitution should be reduced, things like underdevelopment should be reduced. And when we notice that as these things are combined together, they align directly with our national vision, which is to make sure that we leave no one in the development, be it people that are crippled, be it people that are young, be it people that are old, be it people that are blind, be it people that don't have this, that don't have that. So this is what is being taught within the facets of Christianity, that we need to develop ourselves to have morals, develop ourselves to have value, and develop ourselves as men and women that look beyond where their current state is. So our nation is needing such people to arise, men and women that are not focused on complaining about our current state, but men and women that are able to set a vision and find out how can they contribute to transform a particular structure in our nation. And when we all do this as Christians, we realize that we are going to have men that are going to develop the entertainment industry. We're going to have men that are going to develop the education industry. Each and every industry calls for men to arise, and if these men arise, we will realize that we contribute towards the nation. So our nation should stop complaining, and our nation should begin working. The very brick that you are going to lay is going to be important, because remember, Rome was built through bricks, but there was a man that laid the first brick. And today, Rome is as big and as influential as it is. So in developing our Rome, in developing our nation, men and women need to arise. It starts off by you. Because remember, Mobi, we said for you to change a national problem, bring it to become a provincial problem. Take the provincial problem, make it a community problem. Take the community problem, make it a family problem. After a family problem, it is a you problem. So if you don't fix you, you are contributing towards the future of the country being in disaster. But if you fix you, you're going to fix your family, you're going to fix a community, you're going to fix a province, and eventually a nation. And when a nation fears God, works for God, and is developing in the ways of God, now we impact a generation. So our kids and their kids can also get an inheritance. Remember what the psalmist says, that for a man that does not leave an inheritance for his children's children has failed. So we need to leave an inheritance by actually moving to the National Developmental Strategy, taking the principles of God, utilizing them to develop our country, and henceforth become transformational beings in this generation.
Thank you, Tinatinda. And like that, we have come to the end of today's episode. We hope it was impactful and informative as we desired it to be. Let us know if it was via our social media platforms, It's Why Communications on Facebook and on YouTube. Tell us your thoughts. Leave your questions and comments. Like, subscribe, and share. Also hit the notification bell because we still have more to offer so that you don't miss out. That's it for today. My name is Moblessing Chere. From the rest of the production team, it's goodbye and God bless.